risk assets, I think.
All right, the rally may be fading, but the market is still up 5% so far this month. However, our next guest does not believe it's a signal that stocks are out of harm's way. David Stockman, who served as OMB director under President Reagan, joins us on the phone, and he is the author of the book Peak Trump, The Undrainable Swamp and the Fantasy of MAGA. All right, David, good to see you here. You have been bearish for years, predicting a market crash bigger than last December. But right now, we're sitting very close to record high. So tell us why you think President Trump's China policy will hurt stocks and the economy.
Well, I'm a bear on policy. I am a bear on what the Fed has been doing for the last 10 years. It has not really created a strong recovery. In fact, it's 119 months, the weakest real GDP gain in history over the longest expansion. It is reflated, massive bubbles on Wall Street. Stock prices are way beyond sustainable levels, and that's the problem. The issue is, what is the catalyst that is finally going to trigger the huge correction that's implicit in what the Fed is doing? I think it's the trade war. I think Donald Trump is an unhinged, protectionist, nationalist, advocate for trade policies that will eventually disrupt the entire global economy, bring on the recession that's around the corner, and then markets always collapse when recession actually arrives.
We've been talking about a recession for so long, and it hasn't happened. Sure, the data has been weak over the past couple of weeks, but stocks are still record high. So how can you say that Fed's easy monetary policy hasn't helped? It certainly helped asset prices outperform.
Well, it's helped asset prices, but that isn't real. It hasn't helped the real economy. Real GDP growth on average over the last 11 years is 1.5%, the lowest in history. It used to be 3% peak to peak. So, of course, recessions haven't been outlawed, and the longer the expansion lasts, the more crud you're building up in the system, the more bad credit that is being created, and the more dangerous it gets. So who knows when the recession incepts, whether it's month 120 or month 130. The only thing I know is by the historical calendar, we're at the 11th hour in terms of this cycle,
right,
that we haven't deleveraged at all. There's $72 trillion of debt on the economy now,
sure,
public and private, compared to $51 trillion on the peak of the last crisis when they said, we had too much debt and we're over leveraged. So, we're just rolling the dice here, and the idea that the Fed is going to cut rates after 10 years on the zero bound practically is totally nuts. It's an outrageous gift to Wall Street. It won't do anything for Main Street. It won't stop the recession because we're at peak debt. Let me give you one figure that I think proves this. From 2000 to 2007, when we had the big housing boom, household debt grew by 10.5% a year. So that's stimulated the economy, yes, and then it all crashed.
So it's safe to say you are not... Yeah, go ahead.
But let me just finish. From 2007 to the present, that's the last peak to the present, 11 years, household debt has barely crept up at 0.8% a year. In other words, America's broke. 90% of the households in America are tapped out. They can't borrow anymore, and that's the purpose of lower rates, is to stimulate borrowing. But, when you're saturated in debt, more borrowing isn't going to help anything except fuel, a few more months of speculative excess on Wall Street till the whole thing comes down. So it's amazing to me that people who are paying attention to history and to, fundamental laws of economics and finance think the Fed ought to be cutting rates at this stage of the game.
Yeah, I understand. There have been a number of traders who said that we should be careful what we wish for in terms of a Fed rate cut, and that we are in the later stages of this economic cycle. Help us understand where you see stocks going if, in fact, the Fed does cut rates in next week's meeting.
Well, I have no idea where the chart monkeys will take them. They will obviously try to top the last top at 29.50. It may go up beyond that. Who knows? but it is not sustainable because all the debt is there. We can look at the data. There's been no acceleration, no Trump boom. In the first 29 report cards, Trump got 195,000 jobs a month. The last 29 under Obama, monthly job number was 220,000. So I'm not saying Obama was better or Trump's worse. I'm just saying the cycle is getting older and older, and the economy isn't accelerating. It's decelerating. The debt is getting bigger. The speculation is getting greater. The credit is deteriorating rapidly in the auto sector and elsewhere. It's only a matter of time before we run out of luck on a policy that, just isn't sustainable.
David, it's Jim in Chicago. At first, Before I ask the question, I want you to know I agree with about 70% of what you say. I'm going to particularly pick out the part where you called Donald Trump protectionist, because to me that's somewhat baffling. I don't believe in tariffs. I've never believed in tariffs. But if he's using tariffs to try to, at some point in time, achieve an equal playing field where there are no tariffs, how can, one, you say that's protectionist? And if in 6 months both sides come to an agreement and drop the tariffs, will you come back on our show and say you were wrong about this?
Well, first of all, tariffs are inherently protectionist. Secondly, the reason that we have a huge trade deficit with China is not because of an unlevel playing field. It's because the fully loaded wages in China are $5 an hour. They're $30 with benefits and taxes here. That's why we have that massive trade deficits, and we have idiots at the Fed who keep trying to inflate the economy by 2% a year when we should actually be deflating to become more competitive in the world market. So it's not bad trade deals. It's not unfair practices by the Chinese. It's fundamental economics, and he is only risking upsetting the entire apple cart with this infatuation with tariffs. It's dumb. It's stupid. It's almost beyond words of how wrong-headed Trump's trade wars are, and they are going to eventually trigger huge upsets in the world economy because the supply chains are so complex. They're so infinitely integrated around the world that no one knows what's going to happen when these things really come down. And if you think there's going to be a deal with China in June, I think you're not paying attention because Trump is surrounded by China hawks and protectionists and beltway bandits who really want to have a war with China, not simply a trade war.
All right, David, we're going to leave the conversation there. Appreciate you joining us with your strongly worded comments, David Stockman.
Okay.
And to our